Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome into the bowels of Energizer Park here for the City Hub postgame. I'm Matthew Rocchio, joined today by Sports Hub contributor Will Bratton as we break down a big 1-0 victory for St. Louis City SC as they walk away with all 3 points for the second time this season. They now sit at 8 points through their first 4 games, 2 points per game average is always a good thing when you're talking about a soccer team. So a very good start. Maybe not the best game in the world overall, not the most goals scored, only one, and it was from a free kick, not even from open play. But City gets all 3 points, and I think people are going to be pretty happy with that. Will, your opening thoughts on this game?
Overall, the most important thing is you love seeing the ball hit the back of the net.
Yep.
And, you get a bombshell of news. You get some news that Roman Bürki has been injured. He's fractured his hand in training. We got a little more information about that from Melberg post-match as well, saying that happened in training. They didn't even find out that it was fractured until this morning. Mm-hmm. He finished all of training yesterday. So, Ben Lunt really thrown into the mix there. But, he stood tall. And then I don't just mean because he's like 6'7". I mean, he did great. He was confident on the ball, and all the guys seemed really good around him. So overall, those are 2 really good positives to take forward.
Yeah, and one of the good things about coming to you guys so late, I know a lot of people are going to be watching this probably tomorrow morning on Sunday morning, before they get into their nice Sunday days. But here tonight, the fun thing about going this late is we got to talk to the players. We got to talk to Ben Lunt. And one interesting thing we did talk to Ben Lunt was about, obviously, first of all, we got to find out that Roman Bürki texted him this morning. They're obviously very close. That's not surprising considering how often goalies work together. But also just talking to him about how he found the comfortability of his passing game. He wasn't comfortable to play that tiki-taka style right out of the gate. He says it's unreasonable to expect a goalie who doesn't play very often to just jump in and be comfortable with the ball on his feet. So he gets more comfortable throughout time. He connects with some long balls later on. So I agree with you. I thought Lunt really put together a solid game. And I think that there's a big different, kind of a split in, I think, the City fan bases, which is a weird thing to say about a backup goalkeeper. But there are some people, considering the games he's been in, who think Ben Lunt is not a very good goalkeeper. And I think if you ask a lot of people around the league, they would tell you that statistically and potentially, he projects as one of the better backup goalkeepers in the league. And he had a solid game tonight.
Yeah, he absolutely did. The stats can be a little bit deceiving sometimes with, he's conceded 11 goals through 4 appearances, but in those matches, the team playing in front of him was not really doing it in a lot of those matches. But tonight, here in his first MLS clean sheet, I have no problems. I thought he was commanding his box just fine. He came out, challenged balls in the air, and that's the sign of a competent goalkeeper. So for me, I'm very happy with Ben Lunt's performance.
Yeah, only 1 save, but I think he got 2 or 3 more punch outs. And honestly, I think those should be counted as saves as much. You're killing an attack. That should be a save as much as anything, in my opinion. So I thought he had a solid game. And another thing that came up with our conversation, not only with him, but Olaf Melberg, Edward Leuven, Conrad Vollum, is that the team has to improve defensively so much and has made such an improvement defensively. And we saw that kind of focused in today's game. And so, Lund talked about that a lot, just how much more improvement we've seen from this team. And that's the through line through this game, because there's only 3 teams that have ever started a 4-game stretch of an MLS season with 4 shutouts like this. The last time it was happened in 2012. So we're talking about over a decade since the last thing that happened. And so it's pretty special that it actually happened. So the defense playing like that, considering how many issues they had defensively over the first 2 seasons, it's nothing short of incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really just an awesome thing to see. Since 2012, an MLS record. I mean, that's pretty awesome to be a part of. St. Louis City SC, a team that just loves to break records.
And you're right, especially to start seasons. First 5 games with the win in 2023. Now, first 4 games with clean sheets in 2025. You get a new coach. You set a record to start a season. That's how we do things with St. Louis City SC. We got a chance to talk to Olaf Melberg, and the opposite side of the defense being so good is that the other part of the conversations we kept having with Olaf Melberg, Edward Leuven, Conrad Vollum, is that the offense is not good enough right now. Some of the stats that jump out, obviously, is the very low possession numbers, low 30 possession numbers, high 20s the first 3 games. This was another mid-30s game. This is a team that did not have good possession numbers the first 2 seasons. And yet, I don't know if there was a single 4-game stretch where they had all 4 games below like 38% possession. So the fact that the possession numbers have actually gotten even more stark and radical in the lower possession thing, I think that's surprising to a lot of people. But Edward Leuven, I think, put it, the best if you're a City fan, which is if they can get the offense sorted and they can get the offense, going with the way the defense is playing right now, he says that they can dominate teams. And that's something special to hear from a guy like Ed.
Absolutely. When you have leaders on the team, first of all, you want to hear that they're confident that they can, in fact, dominate teams. That's the most important thing. But something that's really interesting to think about, too, is just the way the attack has changed over the 3 seasons that St. Louis City SC has been in Major League Soccer. Of course, you had Bradley ball, then you had hack ball, and now you've got Melbourne
City
ball.
2.0, they call it.
Exactly, City 2.0, and it's 3 relatively different styles, but based on a similar philosophy that Lutz Van der Seel has put in this team from the start. And so it's been an interesting progression to see for sure.
Absolutely. You're listening to the City Hub postgame right now on Sports Hub STL, brought to you by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill. All the games on the time. Your home of STL sports fans since 1990, and your home for St. Louis City fans since 2023 because, well, that's when the team started. So you can't really be the home earlier than that, but Hot Shots has been there since day one. They're the best place to watch all your games around St. Louis City. In fact, this is how you got to build your schedule from now on, guys. You go watch the game at Hot Shots, and then by the time you get home, or on the way home, you're watching City Hub post games on your phone, on YouTube, at home, on your TV to inform you on what you just watched, having a good time at Hot Shot. Because here's the thing. You're going to have a great time. You're going to have a couple drinks. You're going to get some nachos. You're going to miss some important things that happen in the game. But now we're here to fill you in, just like we are on the Cards Hub postgame, Mizzou Hub postgame, Billikens Hub postgame, although that's gone for a few months. I'm sorry, everyone. And, of course, Blues Hub postgame, like we did a few hours ago when the Blues walked away with a huge win behind a Jordan Kyrou hat trick. So, again, thank you very much to Hot Shot, the proud sponsor of all our postgame shows right here on Sports Hub STL. Let's go back in time a little bit. Not only back to the Berkey injury, we already covered that one, but let's go back to about 6:30 today when we saw that starting lineup get announced. Some changes there. We talked with Olaf Melberg about them. He said it was a little bit of a shift in the formation. I was a little surprised. I thought I saw a lot of very similar things in this formation from the previous formation. Back 5, high wing backs, Leuven and Durkin playing a pivot. They did a lot of interesting things there, but nonetheless, Leuven and Durkin playing that pivot. Watts got a little bit more forward, kind of in the Hartel role. Hartel was playing more Teuchert role. Teuchert was playing more striker role. So I thought it was similar, but Olaf said it was different based on what they saw in the last 45 minutes or so against the LA Galaxy. So we got to go off on what Olaf said. The changes we saw, the midfield was different. Durkin and Watts were interchangeable. Watts was usually higher up in possession. Durkin was far back. And then they did 2 different kind of presses with those 2, which is one earlier on in the game. When Watts would go up and press, Durkin would drop back. When Durkin would go up and press, Watts would drop back. But then in the second half, we saw them switch that to maybe the most aggressive press we've seen under Olaf, where both Durkin and Watts were pressing in a high line together up a little bit higher. So your thoughts on the original formation change and then what we saw throughout the game?
Honestly, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I think when we saw that Durkin press really getting up high, I think that's the highest press we've seen under Melberg. I'm talking preseason and these first 4 matches. That was different from anything we've seen. And Melberg kind of touched on this a little bit about how this was specific for the Sounders and specific with the situation that you're in. When you have a goalkeeper who is coming in, kind of cold turkey, out of nowhere. And, while he did great, they had this plan of this fallback where if you need to boot the ball long, you can, right? Yeah. We found ourselves still building out of the back nonetheless, which is wonderful for City 2.0 because that wouldn't have happened last year, a few years ago at all.
Some good moments building out of the back today.
Absolutely. And so, those are some really interesting things to think about. And, Durkin's high press, Teuchert had a really interesting role in that because he was kind of picking and choosing the battles. He was kickstarting everything. And, who do we see that from a lot? Joao Klaus. He sat on the bench for 90 minutes and jogged back and forth on the sidelines.
Teuchert had a very, very Klaus-like game. And Olaf did not agree with me at all today in the pressers because I also pointed out that we haven't seen that role from Teuchert. Olaf says, yeah, we see that role from Teuchert. I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. I don't think we've seen Teuchert since he got here play a game where he was both the solo striker up top and he was asked to have a pretty strong pressing amount. And if you guys disagree with that, please point out the game where I got that one wrong. But I really do think this is a rare game we saw from Cedric Teuchert. I did not expect that. I thought maybe, you bring him in. And the thing that Olaf did mention that I did expect from him, which was why did they go with Teuchert? And he talked about how you had Watts going on runs, which we've seen. Hartel going on runs, which we've seen. That's why those guys work so well with Toysher. That's why those guys work well with Klaus, is because Hartel's always making runs. The midfield makes runs. You talk about playing the wingbacks pretty high. Although the wingbacks, surprisingly enough, I thought, again, in a game where you're going against what I thought would be a pretty low block from Seattle, I really thought the wingbacks would be playing super high, but because of that complete lack of possession, it was actually the most defensive game we've seen from Conrad Wallum and from Thomas Totland. A little surprising there. Let's dive a little bit more into that balance between the defense and the offense, because that was maybe 80% of every answer we got from the players. Are you worried at all about the lack of offense so far from City?
Am I worried?
Concern, is that a better word?
Yeah.
Anxious? What word should I use?
There's a little bit of concern, but overall, I think we've seen, especially in the Colorado game, and I know Edward Lubin touched on this in the post-match presser as well, which is that we've done good things in the attack. Obviously, the San Diego game was not a good example of this, but if you look at the Colorado match, you look at the Galaxy match and some of the chances we were able to create, as well as this evening's match, particularly really in the first half, I thought was much better. But overall, we've created some good chances in the final third. The quality just hasn't been there to finish and put these chances away or create that final pass that opens up the shooting lane. And that was the number one point. I mean, Mellberg touched on it, Leuven touched on it, Wallum touched on it, and even Big Ben Lunt touched on it about how if we can improve on that, we're going to score a lot more goals in these games and take some of the pressure off of our defenders, because Henry Kessler shouldn't be putting up MVP performances every single week. And that's not sustainable. I mean, he's done amazing for us, but we can't expect him to do that every day.
Him and Hebert again today were incredible.
Yes.
And I tweeted out earlier today, if you like the analytics stats, Kessler and Hebert are both top 10 right now in the interrupting goal plus statistic, which basically is the goal plus defensive statistic, which can be balanced, I guess, by fouling, can kind of take off. They're not bad at fouling. They're very good at defense. They're top 10, and arguably they both played like top 10 defenders tonight. Ace Rob comes in and says, love the points. Let's go. I think he's talking about the 3 points the City picked up, because the 1-0 game was not a game that I would describe seeing a lot of points in necessarily. But you're right, Ace Rob. 3 points. Good to go. I mentioned it right off the kick as we opened up our Hot Shots City Hub post game, which is 8 points in 4 games. That's a win right there. Anytime you're looking at 2 points averaging per game, that's a great start. I had a friend on Twitter that just messaged me talking about Olaf Mellberg's quote from the presser talking about the offense, how Akil Watts factors into this team. His comment was he can't wait to see how Rasmus Alm looks in this scheme. Your thoughts on not only Alm, but Celio Pompeu. Where do you think that outside punch that was so important in chunks last year for City, how do you think it fits here with Olaf Mellberg?
So I'm really glad you brought up Celio Pompeu, because I don't think you can talk about Alm without talking about Pompeu, because they're players who have similar kind of role and style when they're on the pitch, and a style that is seeming to be the odd man out in this new City 2.0 system right now. And I think that's something we're seeing a lot with Celio Pompeu being on the bench. He's played 8 minutes so far in 2025. And that's not really something that I expected, to be honest with you. But when you're seeing it on the pitch, it does make sense, because the system is really relying on this target 9. There's not a ton of room when you're in a 3-back to have wingers who are getting so high a lot of the time. There is a world, and we talked about this on Twitter just, I believe yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, but there's a world where this can work, and that's in the 3-4-3 kind of system. But that's not really something Mellberg's played around with a ton yet.
And I think just let's think about the logic. Why does a 3-4-3? Why is it rarer, or why would you be surprised to see it? The fact of the matter is, just think about it logically, people. A 3-4-3 means that you're taking 4 of your 10 outfield players, and you are perpetually putting them in an area of the pitch which they are not in front of the goal to threaten it. You're taking 40% of your potential offense and saying it's not going to be in front of the goal. And it's a little bit different, obviously, with guys like Celio who like to cut it onto their inside foot and things like that. But that's, I think, why you're seeing, if you're going to have so much width from your wingbacks, you're not going to have wingers up front, because, another way to look at it is you want to cover all 5 areas horizontally across a field. You have your 2 flanks, your 2 channels, and your central spot. And so if you have 4 guys, including 2 wingbacks, covering your flanks, you need somebody covering the channels, and that's maybe where those guys come into play. But right now, the channels is covered by the central midfielders going box to box in this system, and so that's why I think we think about why not just overload the flanks. But I think that's why in conventional soccer you don't see it as much, is because the idea is put bodies where they are the most effective and efficient, which is in front of goal, not under the flanks. And that's why I think there's some pushback. Maybe if you're going to see a team that focuses so much on Totland and Wallum on those outside flanks, you're just not going to see as much of a focus on Celio and Erasmus Alm on the outside.
Absolutely. You're 100% right on that. And that's exactly why I think subbing into this in late in a match when you're desperate for a goal is really the only realistic scenario. I don't think we're ever going to start a game or a half in that 3-4-3 situation. So guys like Celio and Rasmus Alm, you got to think about, first of all, Rasmus Alm's injury history and, the implications of that with his contract expiring, I believe, in 2026. Celio Pompeu, this is a player who has, was going through a breakout season in a system that was favorable.
Signed an extension.
Signed an extension. Then he breaks his leg, heartbreaking stuff. Now he's back, right? You've got a player who's hungry, wants this. Do you find a trade partner? Do you sell this player while he's at max value and doesn't fit into your system? What do you think about that?
That's and that's the thing is, man, I don't want to. I feel like just acquiescing to the he doesn't fit into the system thing is a little bit. It's playing into this idea that formations are static when they're not. I mean, we saw it today. It looked to a lot of ways like it was a similar formation. Yet the head coach is saying that's a different formation, and so I think that we get a little bit caught into that again. Everything I'm just saying is combated by the fact that Celio is a guy who likes to cut in and challenge guys. So he can be the guy who attacks the channel, not necessarily the flank. Alm is a little bit trickier because he's also not as much of a guy who needs to make the impact inside the box in the attacking third. He can make he can press from outside. He can whip in crosses. Maybe he can play a right-sided version of what Conrad Wallum is doing over on the left side, and then you go with a more defensive player like a Hannes Horn playing the left wing back spot opposite him. So I think Rasmus Alm, you see the natural fit. Pompeu, the fit makes sense. I just think that they haven't had the opportunity that has presented itself, and that's problematic because I want to see Celio Pompeu. We all want to see Celio Pompeu. To that point, I think the subs from today is an interesting discussion that we should have because
whole line change.
The line change. Leuven goes out early again. We see Alfredo Morales. We see Josh Yarrow. The big one, though, as we're talking about not seeing Celio Pompeu, we saw the season debuts of both Tomas Ostrak and Joachim Nielsen, which I was a little surprised by because just, again, only 8 minutes of Celio so far. So we did see Ostrak. We did see Nielsen. Your thoughts on the season debuts for those two players that we were very excited to see?
I was really excited to see Tomas Ostrak get in the mix, and honestly, I thought he did pretty well. I don't really have any gripes with that. I think subbing him in that situation, this specific system that we were running was really perfect, to be honest with you, for Tomas Ostrak's play style. I thought he fit in like a glove. I don't have any gripes there. Joachim Nielsen coming back is exciting. Coming back from injury, his season debut, only played like 4 minutes or whatever in stoppage time. So it's good to see him on the pitch. I don't think there's really any implications there, but it is good to see him back. He's a player who is, always wanting to be on the pitch, very frustrated with the injuries that he's had. He's talked about, the frustrations associated with that. So it's good to see him back, a world-class defender and really our best spatial defender on the roster at any given time. So if we can get him healthy enough and, keep his glass bones intact, we can get really, really great value out of him in a backline that's already, performing better than any other in the league.
And speaking of the backline performing better than any in the league, we'll start wrapping things up here. How long can City survive without a healthy Roman Berkey?
I think that without a healthy Roman Berkey, and this might be an uncomfortable take for a lot of City fans, but I don't think anything changes. I think the only thing that changes is the potential to steal a game that you shouldn't already win, right? Fair. I think Ben Lunt is going to be reliable. He's going to make the saves that you expect a goalkeeper to save, and he's going to occasionally give up a softie just like any other goalkeeper, just like even Roman Berkey has done, once or twice in his MLS career. But the one thing that you do lose when you lose Roman Berkey is the confidence in your ability for a goalkeeper to literally steal the game, wide open that you didn't deserve.
And his handling. And we talked with Ben Lunt. I mean, he's a guy who is already comfortable. He's so uber comfortable playing at his feet. We've seen more playing out of the back. and things like that. Will Sutton joining us on the chat with a couple of chats. He brought up that Berkey question. That was a great one. We did not get Olaf to talk about the Tots injury. Most likely we'll get an update that on Tuesday from training, and Will also chiming in. Ostrak looked lively and wanting to pick up the ball, and that's who he is. He's a possession and progression player. Those are the things that Tomas Ostrak does. That's why he works so well next to a guy like Chris Durkin or next to an Akil Watts or in a three-man midfield with a Durkin and a Watts and then a Leuven. You cover all the things you need from a midfield. And so, yeah, I was really excited to get Tomas Ostrak involved. Can't wait to see what he can do. And you think about a shift today where everyone kind of got pushed up. And like I said, Watts was playing at times in a role that Hartel would do where he would join the attack. If that's Tomas Ostrak instead, this attack has a better day than it did today. And I think that could be exciting going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that completely. And I also think Tomas Ostrak specifically can contribute a lot to the press and really battering down on a back line and a midfield and kind of just creating problems for a guy like Simon Betcher to come in the 65th, 70th minute against tired legs, frustrated defenders, and just go knock in 2 late goals and just blow open games for us, because that is what that man was born to do. So, I mean, I really like having him back, and it's really exciting. It gives a lot more tactical options for Olaf Melberg now having a guy like Ostrak, and he's gotten the debut out of the way. He's seen the pitch now. He's been out there and he had a good shift. So I'm really excited to see what we get from him.
A 6583 Rob says, I agree the attack will get better. I agree with you, and thanks for chiming in here on the City Hub postgame presented by Sports Hub STL, brought to you, I should say, by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill, home of St. Louis sports since 1990. I like to say home of St. Louis City fans since 2023 and before that, because we're all soccer fans here in St. Louis. Will Sutton says, want to see Olivier Ayres get some starts, like his upside more than Luntz. And listen, your opinion, I don't think there's a lot of people in the building that we're in right now who necessarily would agree with you, Will. But hey, backup keepers are hard to evaluate. So I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say I'm going to disagree with you, but I will say people we talk to, they're very excited about the ceiling for Lunt. And so I'll just say that's what I know, that's what I hear, and that's what I'll relay to you right now. I feel like you probably hear some of the same.
Yeah, I hear the same things. Christian Oliveras is a great shot stopper. Yes. He's really struggles with his feet, and we've seen this in preseason. In fact, the last 2 preseasons, we've seen him create, some problems using his feet in front of the net. Obviously, last year he did great with City 2, very, very well with City 2. So, you love to see him succeed. And there's definitely upside there. I'm not denying that. But I think Ben Lunt is absolutely your number 2 guy. And unless he suddenly gets hurt too, I don't really foresee Christian Oliveras getting any starts. But, we'll see what happens.
That is Will Bratton. I'm Matthew Rocchio, and this is the City Hub postgame on Sports Hub STL. Guys, if you're watching this on Sunday morning and you have some questions for us that you weren't able to get in the chat, first of all, make sure you like and subscribe to the Sports Hub STL YouTube chat. That way you'll get notifications, because every time we go on, bam, bangs right to your phone. And by the way, we're going on after City games. Every time. It might be a little bit delayed because we want to talk to the players so we can bring you things like what Olaf Melberg said, what Edward Leuven said, what Conrad Wallum said. We want to bring you what they say as we're breaking down this game. So it might be a little delayed, but late night after these games on Saturday and Sunday, we're bringing you City Hub postgame after every single City game. We're going to be joined by different people throughout the season. Great having Will in town today, live here from City Park. In fact, but if you're watching today and it is Sunday morning, you have some questions, you have some comments, get at us on Twitter, and we can answer those questions. We'll get some conversations going. You can get it at us at Sports Hub STL, or you can get us personally. Will, where can they get at you?
Will Bratton STL on Twitter, X, or STL City SC Views on Instagram.
And tweet at me at ROCCSTL. Let's get a little City conversation going, because they're rolling right now. No goals allowed. Pushing for the top of the table in the MLS, 8 points after 4 games. It's getting interesting down here at Energizer Park, and it's going to keep up. So keep up with us here on City Hub Postgame. We'll have coverage in midweek from training from City. Usually it's Tuesday and Thursday. Sometimes it's Tuesday and Friday. But we'll bring more coverage for St. Louis City right here on Sports Hub STL and the City Hub Postgame. Have a great night, St. Louis.